Well, hello again, you all. Now we're going to start the actual content of this class. And as we talked about before, we're going to look at three ways of doing what is called community development. One is called community organizing, another is called community building, and then there's the traditional forms of community development. Community organizing, we have to start with community organizing, and to start with community organizing, we have to start with SAR Alinsky. SAR Alinsky was a formidable figure in all thinking and talking about community, and almost everything that has happened since he came on the scene has in some way been related to him. Every community organization has to decide how it relates to Alinsky and Alinsky tactics, and every community-based group has to decide whether it wants to be a people's organization in the way that Alinsky described, or whether it wants to be something else. And so, we're going to start out with Saul Alinsky's seminal work, Reveille for Radicals. In Reveille for Radicals, Alinsky was young, firebrand, crazy guy, and he was just coming up with these ideas. He was synthesizing the work of union organizers who had very established tactics, but only worked with folks in their workplaces, and so had a head start on trying to build common interests because everybody had the same common interest. They worked together. Alinsky started to say, well, okay, what if we took some of these tactics and these strategies and tried to put them to work where people live together? Now, where people live together, they might not agree with each other. They might not have common interests. In fact, their interests might be at odds with each other. So Alinsky had to try to think about how you would do that kind of work in places that people lived. And as a result, came up with what we now call community organizing. There's so many significant ideas in Alinsky's work that what I want you to do is, and I'll explain it now, but it's also in the assignment, you can read it. Read the book. Enjoy it. There are some foibles about it. It was written in 1947, so some of the language is a little off-putting. And it's kind of sexist. You know, all organizers were men then. Not today, but for the longest time it was all guys. And he has this obnoxious habit about telling stories that he's made up, which you'll discover. But in the midst of it, it's his youthful, enthusiastic proclamation of this is how we save the world, is through organizing people where they live, organizing them for power. The language of Alinsky is you hear everywhere now in any community organization, but you'll hear it for the first time or read it for the first time in Reveille for Radicals. So read Reveille. Pay specific attention to the up to and including the chapter called Conflict Tactics. And then once you've done that, you'll find a little narrated PowerPoint by me, sort of mapping out Alinsky's thought. Wander through that. And then only after you've done those two things, in the second unit of Saul Alinsky and Community Organizing, Unit 2, you'll find links to a film that was made in the 90s called The Democratic Promise, Saul Alinsky and His Legacy. And in those, besides having great archival stuff about Chicago during Alinsky's time here, and also Alinsky's organizing projects here. It shows the ways in which today community organizations use Alinsky and his thought to make change in their communities. So by the time you encounter those stories, you'll get used to the language of power and conflict and victories and etc., etc., etc. In fact, listen for the way that people today still use exactly the same language when they talk about organizing as Alinsky. There's also one in each unit, forum questions that I want you to address. The first one should be done by, I believe it's the 6th of September, and it's very related to the issues just in the book. And the second one is to be done by the 13th of September, is very related to the issues in the film. And then when we have our September 16th online, a synchronous session, we'll talk about Alinsky. And I will have arranged with some of you to be the official asker of questions for all of us to discuss online. So, that's it. Alinsky, Saul Alinsky. Here's one last thing about Alinsky. He cusses like a sailor. If you're sensitive to that stuff, just put your earphones on. Okay, that's it. Over and out for me. Bye.